First contact in the shadows. The rhythmic hum of maintenance drones echoed through New Shanghai's abandoned Level 0 as Sarah Chen made her final security sweep. 20 years of corporate security work had taught her to trust her instincts, and tonight something felt off. The abandoned subway station's usual eerie quiet was disturbed by something she couldn't quite place. Sarah's augmented eye whirred as it adjusted to the low light, its cyan glow reflecting off the decay-stained walls. This sector had been officially condemned after the quantum reactor incident 5 years ago, but that hadn't stopped it from becoming a haven for those who preferred to avoid upper-city scrutiny. Her job was simple: keep the desperate and dangerous from setting up camp too close to corporate territory. A sound, barely perceptible, caught her attention. Not the usual scuttling of maintenance drones or the drip of corroded pipes. Something organic. Something trying very hard to remain undetected. Security Officer Chen, monthly sweep complete. No anomalies to report. She spoke into her comm, knowing any potential threat would be listening. Her free hand rested on the neural stunner at her hip, its familiar weight reassuring. The sound came again. A ragged breath, followed by the softest whimper of pain. Sarah's augmented eye zoomed in on a shadowed alcove, picking up traces of an unusual heat signature. Too tall for a standard human, too cool for mammalian life. "This is Security Officer Chen initiating investigative protocol," she announced clearly, drawing her stunner. "Show yourself slowly. No sudden movements." The shadow shifted, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. A figure emerged, easily 7 feet tall, with skin that seemed to absorb the dim light rather than reflect it. But it was the eyes that held her attention. 3 of them, arranged in a triangle, glowing with a soft violet light that spoke of both intelligence and fear. "Please," the creature whispered, its voice carrying harmonics that made Sarah's augmented audio processors crackle. "They're hunting me. I can't run anymore." The alien, for it could be nothing else, stumbled forward, revealing a nasty wound along its side where something had torn through what appeared to be some kind of environmental suit. The injury leaked a phosphorescent fluid that cast strange patterns on the station floor. Sarah's training screamed at her to call this in. First contact protocols were clear. All alien encounters were to be immediately reported to corporate command. But something in those 3 frightened eyes made her hesitate. She'd seen that look before, in the faces of too many refugees fleeing corporate justice. "You're hurt," Sarah said, keeping her stunner trained on the alien but lowering it slightly. "Who's hunting you?" "The preservers," the alien managed, its translator struggling with the concept. "They believe purity must be maintained. No mixing of species, no sharing of knowledge." Sarah somehow knew, pressed a hand against the wound. "I discovered something that could change everything. But they would rather see it destroyed than allow our peoples to grow closer." Sarah's mind raced. She had 10 minutes before her next scheduled check-in. Corporate would know something was wrong if she didn't report, but they'd also know something was wrong if she did report, and then help this creature escape. The choice she made in the next few moments would change everything. "I have a safe house," Sarah found herself saying, surprised by her own decision. "It's not much, but it's off the grid. Corporate doesn't know about it." She took a step closer, finally lowering her stunner completely. "I can help you, but you need to trust me. Can you do that?" The alien's 3 eyes studied her intently, and Sarah felt like her very soul was being examined. Finally, the creature nodded, the movement unnervingly smooth. "I am Nixus," she said, "and I think perhaps you are exactly who I was meant to find." Sarah's augmented eye picked up multiple heat signatures entering the sector. They were running out of time. "Can you walk?" "I can manage," Nixus said, though her posture suggested otherwise. "Then let's move." And Nixus. Sarah activated her neural dampeners, preparing for what would likely be a very interesting evening. "Welcome to Earth. Sorry about the mess." As they made their way through the shadowed corridors of Level 0, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just stepped into something much bigger than a simple rescue. The way Nixis moved, the advanced technology evident in her damaged suit, the mention of mixing species, it all pointed to something that could shake the foundations of human-alien relations. But for now, they had to focus on survival. Questions could wait. The sound of boots on metal grating echoed from behind them, and Sarah quickened their pace. She'd chosen her path, and there would be no going back. Whatever secrets Nixis carried, whatever dangers pursued them, they were in this together now. And Sarah Chen, who had spent her life enforcing corporate rules, found herself surprisingly comfortable with breaking every protocol in the book. Sometimes, she reflected, the right thing and the legal thing were universes apart. Trust among stars. Sarah's safe house was a forgotten maintenance hub tucked away in the bones of old Shanghai, 3 levels below the abandoned subway station. As she sealed the reinforced door behind them, the familiar hum of her independent power grid provided a small measure of comfort. The space wasn't much, a few rooms carved out of the ancient infrastructure, but it was secure, and right now, that's what mattered most. Nixis collapsed onto the medical cot, her phosphorescent blood casting dancing shadows on the curved metal ceiling. The aliens' 3 eyes had dimmed considerably since their escape, and Sarah knew they were running out of time. "I need to treat that wound," Sarah said, retrieving her emergency medkit. "But I don't know anything about your physiology. You'll have to guide me." "The principles are similar," Nixis managed, her translator struggling to maintain coherence. "We're more alike than either of our species realizes. That's part of what I discovered." She gestured weakly to a compartment in her damaged environmental suit. "There's a medical interface. It can translate my biological data into terms your equipment will understand." Sarah carefully extracted a crystalline device from the suit. As soon as it touched her medical scanner, streams of data began flowing across her augmented vision. What she saw made her breath catch. "This can't be right," she muttered, recalibrating her scanner. "Your genetic structure, it's adapting in real time. Incorporating elements from..." She looked up sharply. "From human DNA." Nixis's 3 eyes focused on her with renewed intensity. "Now you begin to understand why they hunt me. My research showed that our species are compatible at a fundamental level. We're not meant to be separate. The barriers between us are artificial, constructed by those who profit from our division." Sarah's hands moved efficiently as she applied regenerative foam to the wound, her mind racing with implications. "The preservers you mentioned. They're not just after you because of your research, are they? They're afraid of what it represents. Unity." Nixis confirmed, relaxing slightly as the medication took effect. "My people believe themselves superior, separate from all others. Humans are viewed as dangerous primitives, barely worth studying. But I saw something different in your species' genetic code, extraordinary adaptability, resilience, and potential for growth that my people lost long ago." An alert flashed across Sarah's augmented vision. An encrypted transmission trying to breach her safe house's communications blackout. Someone was looking for them, and they were getting closer. "Your wound should stabilize soon," Sarah said, watching the regenerative foam slowly knit the alien tissue together. "But we can't stay here long." "Those weren't just corporate security forces back there, were they?" Nixis attempted to sit up, her movements more fluid now that the pain was subsiding. "No, the preservers have agents everywhere, in every species' power structures. They've spent millennia maintaining what they call genetic purity. The idea that humans could be the key to advancement, to healing the genetic stagnation that plagues so many species. It threatens everything they've built." Sarah moved to her security console, fingers dancing across holographic displays as she checked their perimeter. "Why come to Earth? Why risk everything?" "Because your planet is changing everything, whether the preservers admit it or not. Humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage has created ripples they can't control. Your species adapts, grows, challenges assumptions. You ask questions that should never be asked. Nix's translator hummed with something like admiration. Like you did tonight, when you chose to help me instead of following your protocols. A warning flashed red across Sarah's augmented vision. Energy signatures matching preserver technology were moving through level 0, sweeping methodically. They were running out of time. We need to move, Sarah said, already gathering essential supplies. I have another location, deeper in the old city. But first, she turned to face Nixis fully. I need to know everything. What exactly did you discover about human DNA? What makes us so special that both your people and these preservers would rather see your research destroyed? Nixis rose from the cot, her height making the small room feel even more cramped. Her 3 eyes seemed to glow brighter as she reached out, placing a long-fingered hand against Sarah's chest. Feel your heartbeat. Your species has 2 atrial chambers and 2 ventricular chambers, a redundancy that provides incredible resilience. This pattern repeats throughout your entire genetic structure. Backup systems, adaptation mechanisms, repair protocols that other species lost eons ago. You're saying we're primitive? Sarah asked, raising an eyebrow. I'm saying you're perfect, Nixis corrected. Unrefined, yes, but possessing exactly what the galaxy needs. My people, and many others, engineered ourselves into evolutionary dead ends pursuing what we thought was perfection. But humanity, you're still evolving, still changing. Your DNA could be the key to saving countless species from genetic collapse. The proximity alarm pulsed urgently. Their pursuers were getting closer. Then we better make sure your research survives, Sarah said, checking her weapons. Ready for another run. Nixis straightened to her full height, her 3 eyes gleaming with determination. With you. Always. As they prepared to leave their temporary sanctuary, Sarah couldn't help but smile. She'd started this night doing a routine security sweep, and now she was running from ancient conspiracies with an alien scientist who thought humanity might be the galaxy's last hope. It wasn't exactly how she planned to spend her evening, but somehow it felt right. The future of multiple species might depend on what happened next, but Sarah found herself surprisingly calm. After all, if there was one thing humans were good at, it was adapting to impossible situations, and she intended to prove just how adaptable they could be. Running through starlight. The ancient maintenance tunnels beneath old Shanghai had never been meant to accommodate someone of Nixis's height. Sarah watched as the alien scientist ducked beneath another low-hanging pipe, her movements becoming more graceful as the regenerative foam continued its work. They'd been moving for hours, following a maze of forgotten passages that even corporate had abandoned to time and decay. Your heart rate is elevated, Nixis observed, her 3 eyes casting enough violet light to illuminate their path. You're worried about something beyond our pursuers. Sarah checked her augmented vision's rear scanners before responding. Corporate will have noticed my missed check-in by now. They'll be reviewing my last transmissions, analyzing my behavior patterns. She managed a grim smile. 20 years of perfect service, about to go up in smoke. You regret helping me? Nixis asked, her translator conveying genuine concern. No, Sarah answered without hesitation. But I'm trying to figure out why I don't. She paused at an intersection, consulting the mapped route in her augmented display. I've spent my entire career following rules, maintaining order. Now I'm harboring a fugitive alien and running from both corporate and some ancient conspiracy. I should be terrified, or at least conflicted. But you're not. No, I'm not. And that's what worries me. Their conversation was interrupted by a distant rumble. Sarah's augmented eyes zoomed in on microscopic cracks spreading through the tunnel's ancient concrete. They're using sonic probes, she muttered, trying to flush us out. The vibrations will destabilize these old structures, Nixis warned, placing a hand against the wall. We need tow. The tunnel lurched violently, sending cascades of dust and debris raining down. Sarah reacted instantly, pushing Nixis into a reinforced doorway as a section of ceiling collapsed behind them. The impact knocked out the tunnel's ancient emergency lights, leaving them in darkness broken only by the glow of Nixis's eyes and Sarah's augmentations. Well, Sarah coughed, finding herself pressed close against Nixis in the cramped doorway. That's one way to block pursuit. She tried to ignore how the alien skin seemed to pulse with a subtle bioluminescence, or how her own heart rate spiked at their proximity. "Your species," Nixis said softly, making no move to create distance between them, "is fascinating in ways beyond genetics. You act against your own interests to help others. You trust despite every reason not to. You." She paused, her three eyes focusing intently on Sarah's face. "You're experiencing physiological changes consistent with attraction." Sarah felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Your translator must be malfunctioning." "It isn't." Nixis raised a hand, fingers costing over Sarah's augmented eye with surprising gentleness. "Your pupil dilation, elevated heart rate, increased skin temperature, all classic human indicators. And yet you try to deny it." Another fascinating contradiction. Before Sarah could respond, her augmented vision flashed a warning. "Multiple contacts," she whispered, switching to thermal imaging. "They're above us, using the collapse to." Her eyes widened. "They're hurting us." As if to confirm her words, another explosion rocked the tunnel, this one from ahead. The path they'd been following was now blocked in both directions, leaving only one route open: up, toward the surface, and what was almost certainly a trap. "They're forcing us into the open," Nixis realized, her translator conveying frustration. "Using human hunting tactics. The preservers are adapting. Then we'll adapt faster." Sarah accessed her augmented eye's full spectrum, scanning their surroundings. "There's an old power conduit running parallel to this tunnel. If we can reach it." She turned to Nixis, suddenly very aware they were still pressed together in the doorway. "Do you trust me?" "With my life," Nixis answered without hesitation. "With everything I've discovered." "With..." She broke off as Sarah's augmented eye detected another wave of sonic probes powering up. "Hold tight," Sarah ordered, pulling a shaped charge from her tactical vest. "This is going to get interesting." The explosion was precisely calculated, breaching the tunnel wall without causing another collapse. Sarah and Nixis squeezed through the opening into a vertical shaft that seemed to stretch endlessly in both directions. Ancient maintenance rails ran along its length, disappearing into darkness above and below. The conduit connected old Shanghai's quantum reactor to the surface grid, Sarah explained, securing a grapple line to one of the rails. "It's heavily shielded, should mask our signatures long enough to..." Her words cut off as Nixis suddenly pulled her close, three eyes blazing with intensity. "Your species," the alien said, voice carrying harmonics that made Sarah's augmented audio processors sing, "constantly surprises me. You plan while facing death. You create while others destroy. You feel so deeply while staying focused on survival." Her hand found Sarah's face again. "I think I understand now why the preservers fear you so much. Your adaptability isn't just genetic. It's in everything you are." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Then another explosion rocked the shaft, and reality reasserted itself. "We need to move," Sarah said, her voice rougher than usual. "Up or down?" "Down," Nixis decided. "They'll expect us to go up, toward potential escape routes. Down leads to the old reactor complex. Unstable, dangerous. Perfect for humans." Sarah grinned, securing the grapple line around them both. "We do our best work in impossible situations." As they began their descent into darkness, Sarah's mind raced with questions. About the preservers, about Nixis research, about the strange connection growing between them. But one thing was becoming increasingly clear. Whatever was happening between them, whatever dangers they faced, it was changing everything. And maybe that was exactly what both their species needed. The sound of pursuit echoed from above, But Sarah felt oddly calm. She'd chosen her path, chosen to trust her instincts, and this remarkable alien who saw humanity's contradictions as strengths rather than flaws. Whatever waited in the darkness below, they would face it together, adapting, surviving, and maybe even changing the galaxy in the process. The edge of evolution. The abandoned quantum reactor complex sprawled beneath them like a dead city. Sarah's augmented vision painted the massive chamber in shades of green and blue, revealing the skeletal remains of humanity's first attempts at harnessing quantum energy. The air here was thick with residual radiation, though her sensors indicated levels within survivable parameters. The radiation, Nixis said, her three eyes scanning the darkness. It's affecting my biological readings. The preservers will have difficulty tracking us here. That's not an accident, Sarah replied, leading them across a narrow maintenance bridge. After the containment breach, corporate discovered the radiation created unique interference patterns. They used it to mask certain, classified activities. You've been here before. It wasn't a question. Sarah nodded anyway. 5 years ago. My last assignment before being reassigned to surface security. I never knew exactly what they were researching, but she stopped, her augmented eye detecting something unusual. That's impossible. What is it? These energy signatures. Sarah moved closer to a sealed blast door, its surface covered in warning symbols in multiple languages. They're active. This facility is supposed to be dead, but something in there is still running. Nixis placed her hand against the door, her skin's bioluminescence pulsing in an odd rhythm. There's more. These markings, beneath the warning signs, they're preserver script. Ancient formula for genetic manipulation. Sarah's augmented vision zoomed in on the barely visible symbols. You're saying corporate was working with the preservers. Why would they? She broke off as her scanner decoded more of the text. These are dating back decades, long before official first contact. The preservers have been manipulating Earth's development for centuries, Nixis explained, her translator humming with suppressed emotion, guiding your species away from certain technological and biological advancements. But they couldn't completely suppress humanity's natural drive to evolve, to adapt. A distant explosion echoed through the complex. Their pursuers were getting closer, but Sarah barely noticed. Her mind was racing, connecting dots she'd never seen before. The quantum reactor accident. It wasn't an accident, was it? No. Nix's eyes dimmed slightly. When I discovered the truth about human genetic potential, I also found evidence of systematic interference. The preservers have been sabotaging human advancement, trying to keep your species contained. But they underestimated you. Every obstacle they created, humans found a way around. Every limitation they imposed, humans evolved past. Sarah's hand found her neural stunner as another explosion sounded, closer this time. We need to get inside that lab. Whatever they were working on is exactly what we need, Nixis finished. She pressed her hand more firmly against the door. And to Sarah's surprise, the ancient locking mechanism began to respond. My people helped design these facilities, though few remember that now. The locks respond to specific genetic markers. The blast door groaned open, revealing a space that sent chills down Sarah's spine. The laboratory beyond was a mix of human and alien technology, but what caught her attention were the stasis pods lining the walls. Each contained what appeared to be a hybrid. Human and alien genetic structures merged in various combinations. They were experimenting, Sarah whispered, her augmented eye struggling to process the biological data streaming from the pods, trying to understand why humans could adapt so easily to alien DNA. Yes, but they were asking the wrong questions. Nixis moved to a central console, her fingers dancing across controls that responded to her touch. They thought humanity's adaptability was a flaw to be corrected. They never considered it might be the solution they'd been seeking for millennia. The console hummed to life, projecting a holographic display that filled the chamber. Sarah watched in amazement as genetic structures danced and merged before her eyes. This is what I discovered, Nixis explained, her voice filled with wonder. Human DNA doesn't just adapt to alien genetic structures. It stabilizes them, strengthens them. Your species evolved in isolation, developing redundancies and adaptation mechanisms that the rest of us engineered out of ourselves in our pursuit of perceived perfection. Another explosion rocked the facility, much closer now. Sarah's tactical training kicked in as she secured the entrance, but her mind was still processing the implications of what she was seeing. The preservers, she said slowly, they're not trying to protect genetic purity, are they? They're trying to hide the fact that they made a mistake. That in trying to perfect their species, they actually made them vulnerable. Nixis confirmed. My people, and many others, are facing genetic collapse. Centuries of engineered evolution have left us unable to adapt to new challenges. But humanity. She turned to Sarah, her three eyes blazing with intensity. Your supposed imperfections, your redundant systems, your constant drive to change and grow. They're exactly what we need to survive. The final piece clicked into place in Sarah's mind. That's why you really came to Earth, not just to protect your research, but to make contact, to establish a connection. Nixis moved closer, her bioluminescence pulsing in sync with Sarah's heartbeat. The physical attraction between us isn't an accident, Sarah. It's biology recognizing compatibility, recognizing potential. The implications made Sarah's head spin. You're saying that humans and aliens could be the key to saving both our species. Nixis reached out, her hand finding Sarah's face with desperate intensity. The preservers fear this truth because it proves their entire philosophy wrong. Evolution isn't about maintaining purity. It's about adaptation, change, growth, everything that humanity embodies. A final explosion breached the outer chambers. They were out of time. Then we make sure this truth survives, Sarah said, drawing her weapon as heavy footsteps approached. Together, Nix's three eyes gleamed with determination and something more, something that made Sarah's augmented systems register spikes across all her biological readings. Together, the alien agreed. As their pursuers closed in, Sarah couldn't help but smile. She'd started this night as a simple security officer, and now she stood at the edge of evolution itself, defending a truth that could change the galaxy. It wasn't exactly in her job description, but then again, adapting to impossible situations was exactly what humans did best. Dawn of new horizons. The laboratory's blast doors wouldn't hold much longer. Sarah could hear the preserver's cutting tools screaming against the reinforced metal as she and Nixis worked frantically at the central console, downloading decades of research into portable quantum drives. We need a way to broadcast this data, Sarah said, her augmented eye tracking multiple threat signatures converging on their position, something the preservers can't contain. Nix's fingers flew across the alien interface, her three eyes glowing with fierce concentration. The quantum reactor's old transmission array. If we can reactivate it, we could use the radiation interference pattern to hide the signal until it's too late for them to stop it. A section of the blast door began to glow cherry red. Sarah's tactical training told her they had minutes at most. They'll have ships in orbit watching for any transmission. Yes, Nixis agreed, not looking up from her work. But they won't be watching for this. She pulled up a schematic that made Sarah's augmented vision spark with recognition. FATS, that's the containment breach pattern from 5 years ago. You're going to recreate the accident. With modifications. Nix's translator hummed with grim satisfaction. The radiation signature will mask our data burst within what appears to be normal background chaos. By the time they realize what's happening, the truth will be spreading across every major communication network in the sector. The blast door screamed as something massive slammed against it. Sarah took up a defensive position, neural stunner charged to maximum. You know this means we can never go back. Once this gets out, everything changes. Everything already changed the moment you chose to help me. Nixis paused in her work, her three eyes finding Sarah's with an intensity that made the human's heart race. Your species' greatest strength isn't just your genetic adaptability. It's your capacity to take impossible chances, to trust despite every reason not to fight for what you believe is right even when it costs you everything. Another impact shook the laboratory. The door was beginning to buckle. The transfer's at 80%, Nixis reported, but the transmission array needs to be activated manually from the reactor core chamber. The radiation levels there will kill anyone who stays too long. Sarah finished. Her augmented eye was already calculating survival probabilities. How long do you need? 3 minutes to complete the transfer. Another 2 to encode and broadcast. Nix's voice carried harmonics of distress. Sarah, no. The radiation exposure, even with your augmentations, will give me about 4 minutes before critical organ failure. Sarah managed a grim smile. More than enough time, thanks to humanity's redundant systems and backup organs that you so admire. I won't let you sacrifice yourself. Who said anything about sacrifice? Sarah pulled a small device from her tactical vest. Remember that classified corporate research I mentioned? Turns out they developed some interesting radiation countermeasures. Experimental stuff, probably illegal in most sectors. The blast door's hinges began to tear free. Sarah could see armored figures through the gaps. A mix of human and alien tech, all bearing the ancient symbols of the preservers. 150 seconds, Sarah said, already moving toward the reactor core access. Think you can hold them that long? Instead of answering, Nixis caught Sarah's arm, pulling her into a kiss that sent every one of her augmented sensors into overload. When they broke apart, Sarah's vision was filled with cascading warning messages about elevated heart rate and hormone levels. Now your genetic material carries trace markers of my species, Nixis said, her three eyes blazing. The ultimate proof of compatibility. Come back to me, Sarah Chen, so we can show the galaxy what's possible when we stop fearing change and start embracing it instead. The blast door finally gave way with a thunderous crash. Sarah injected herself with the radiation countermeasure, feeling ice spread through her veins. 150 seconds, she repeated, forcing herself to turn away from Nixis. Make them count. The next few minutes became a blur of desperate action. Sarah sprinted through irradiated corridors, while Nixis held off the preservers with a combination of alien tech and human weaponry. The reactor core chamber was a cathedral of twisted metal and pulsing quantum energy, its control systems responding sluggishly to Sarah's commands. Warning messages crowded her augmented vision as radiation began overwhelming her countermeasures. She ignored them all, focused only on completing the sequence that would broadcast the truth to every corner of known space. The final command required both genetic authentication and physical activation. Sarah pressed her palm against the scanner, letting it read the now hybrid markers in her DNA, human and alien combined. Above her, the massive transmission array began to hum with awakening power. Transfer complete. Nix's voice crackled through her comm. Broadcasting now. Sarah's augmented eye showed her the data stream erupting from the facility, decades of suppressed research, proof of the preserver's manipulation, and most importantly, evidence that humanity's supposed genetic flaws were actually the key to saving countless species from evolutionary stagnation. The reactor core chamber filled with armed figures as Sarah's radiation exposure reached critical levels. She turned to face them, neural stunner raised, and smiled through blood-stained teeth. You know what your biggest mistake was? She asked the silent preservers. Thinking you could stop humans from doing what we do best, adapting, evolving, connecting with others despite every barrier you tried to put in our way. The chamber erupted in chaos as Nixis burst in from another access point, her alien weapons cutting through the preservers' ranks. Sarah's augmented systems were failing, but she saw enough to appreciate the poetry of it. Human and alien fighting side by side, their strengths complementing each other perfectly. The last thing Sarah remembered before losing consciousness was Nyx's catching her as she fell, 3 violet eyes filled with emotions that transcended species barriers. She woke up 3 days later in a secure medical facility, her body flush with hybrid cellular structures that her augmented systems couldn't quite categorize. Nyx sat beside her, looking simultaneously exhausted and radiant. "The truth is out," the alien said without preamble. "The preservers are in chaos. Multiple species have already reached out, seeking to establish diplomatic relations with Earth. They're calling it the start of a new age of galactic cooperation." "And us?" Sarah asked, noting how her augmented vision now interpreted Nyx's biological signatures as perfectly compatible. "We're living proof of what's possible." Nyx took her hand, their fingers intertwining naturally despite their differences. "The first of many bridges between species. That is, if you're willing to keep adapting to impossible situations with me." Sarah looked down at their joined hands, human and alien, different yet perfectly complementary. "Well," she said, smiling, "adaptation is what humans do best." Outside the medical facility, sunrise painted New Shanghai's skyline in shades of hope. The galaxy was changing, barriers were falling, and humanity's greatest perceived weakness had proven to be its greatest strength. It wasn't the future anyone had expected. But then again, the best evolutionary leaps never were.